It's been the worst week of Gary Jubelin's life. First, he was found guilty of breaking the law.
Obviously, I'm disappointed by the decision of the court.
And then, along with a criminal record, was handed a $10,000 fine.
The system mightn't be perfect, but it's the best system we've got. I've got no animosity towards the New South Wales Police.
But most difficult for this former top homicide detective has been the shredding of his character in court. He describes your testimony as untenable and unbelievable, that you were evasive and you knew you were breaking the law.
From a police officer's point of view, a career detective, that's probably the most offensive and hurtful thing that could be said. It shocked me to the core and rocked me.
But during your testimony, were you telling the truth?
Most certainly I was telling the truth. I was under oath.
Gary Jubelin found himself in trouble last year when he was charged with illegally recording 4 conversations using a mobile phone. The person he recorded was someone he suspected may be involved in the disappearance of 3-year-old William Tyrrell. He feared the man may make false allegations against him and believed he was legally entitled to make the recordings to protect himself.
The recording on my phone was purely to protect my lawful interests if allegations came against me.
Just a week ago, Gary Jubelin hoped for a different result. As he headed to court to learn his fate, no longer a detective, but a defendant, Gary's new reality was jarring.
I thought I'd be more prepared for it because it's been such a long time coming, but now that I'm actually heading there and going to hear a magistrate say guilty or innocent, that feels surreal.
You just never imagined that those words would be used in a judgment of you? Is that what you mean?
100%. It's like watching a movie. It's not, it doesn't even feel like it's involving me.
You've spent a lot of time alongside criminals, investigating them. Did you ever think you'd be considered one? No. I never thought I would ever be charged. It hurts me, it humiliates me. But the humiliation was about to get worse. 3 hours after entering court, Gary was found guilty on all 4 charges, and his defence was dismissed as rehearsed, self-serving, and ultimately unbelievable. Come through, Gary.
Okay.
Immediately after the harsh finding, the disappointment for Gary and his legal team is palpable.
I'm shattered, obviously.
The mood and the man are changed.
I'm sorry, I'm just ranting, but it just felt so personal and there was no need for it to be made personal.
The magistrate believes you knew that by recording those conversations you were acting illegally.
That's what the magistrate has said. Yeah.
Did you know that what you were doing was illegal?
No, I didn't know it. I accept that. My interpretation of the law was that I had a lawful right.
If you accept the court's decision that your interpretation of the law was wrong, do you today feel silly about that interpretation? I feel stupid that I've done something that has brought a criminal conviction against me. I feel stupid about that. But I don't think it's silly that that's how I interpreted the law. There was a lot of other informed people that believed that was the correct interpretation of the law, and there was a 2-week hearing to work out whether that was right or wrong.
Detectives raided the apartment, uncovering a stockpile of explosive material.
There was a great deal of planning and organisation that went into the crimes.
Police say they believe all the cases are linked.
For his supporters, people like victims of crime, Mark and Faye Leveson, Gary Jubelin's fall from grace has been extraordinary.
It's mystifying. I mean, to think that it's got to this point over such a trivial matter, it's mind-blowing.
He just wanted to put the bad guys away. That's all he ever wanted to do.
Barbara Saunders had just left Normanhurst Station.
One of the motives that we're looking at is the possibility that it was a robbery.
He's seen as someone who's one of the longest-serving, most committed, dedicated homicide investigators.
As his old boss, former New South Wales Deputy Police Commissioner Nick Caldis knows, Gary has been the lead detective on some of the biggest murder investigations in the country.
This is a head start we've got with an investigation that you don't get with a lot of investigations. We know.
And no case has been more haunting than his very last, that of missing toddler William Tyrrell. But with shock allegations of misconduct, Gary was taken off the case after leading it for 4 years, and tragically, it remains unsolved.
And my part in it, that eats me away. That, yeah, I'm there to help the people, and now, yeah, because of the circumstances I find myself in, it's jeopardised the investigation.
William Tyrrell was last seen playing on his grandmother's lawn in northern New South Wales in September 2014. The little boy in the Spider-Man suit seemed to vanish in an instant. 5 months later, in early 2015, Gary Jubelin was assigned to lead the investigation.
Get out of the way, I can't see the traffic.
Like hundreds of other persons of interest, neighbour Paul Savage was someone Gary felt he needed to either confirm or eliminate as a suspect in the case.
I was dealing with someone described as delusional. I was also speaking to him on my own, which is quite rare, coupled with the fact that the listening devices constantly failed.
Unable to trust the unreliable police listening devices, Gary was convinced he needed to record his dealings with Paul Savage, and so made the decision that would ultimately destroy his career and see him convicted.
Hello?
Hello, Paul.
Yes?
Gary Jubelin here from the police.
With the knowledge of fellow officers, Gary recorded 4 conversations with Paul.
I'm not getting the truth from you, and that causes me concern.
That's the thing.
Whether it was an accident or whether it was just brain snap for a moment, we can resolve this. As I'm sitting here now, in the circumstances, I wish the hell I didn't record those conversations, but at the time, I was pushing the envelope on a very difficult investigation, and I needed to protect myself.
When you were pushing the envelope, did you cross the line?
No, I didn't cross the line. I get no joy from going hard at people in murder investigations. But I have a certain responsibility as a homicide detective, and that's to explore what's happened to the victim. That's my job.
For you personally, when you come here, does it make you confront everything you've lost?
Yes, it does.
Gary says he had good reason to investigate Paul Savage. Despite the 74-year-old's denials, he had anything to do with William's disappearance.
Get away with that bloody thing, mate. I don't need your rubbish.
He lived across the road from William's grandma. Said he searched for the little boy for half an hour, but then couldn't account for his whereabouts for 2 hours.
I'm saying you walk through the bush looking for a child. So specifically, you spend 30 minutes of your time walking through thick bushland looking for a child.
That's right.
Wouldn't the normal thing to be to report back to the family saying, I couldn't find him up there, or at the very least, go up and see if he's been found? Well, you weren't even curious. You go in there and have a cup of tea.
I don't have to be curious when I can hear everybody else looking for the little boy.
So you know he's still lost.
Gary was also interested in Paul Savage because his car was similar to the car driven by William's foster father. Gary was working on the possibility the little boy had run towards the Savage property, thinking his dad was there.
One theory, and I emphasise one theory, a case theory, is perhaps William saw that car and mistook it for his father's car. I'd put a lot of weight on the fact that William's sister said that William was looking for a dad's car. The foster mother has indicated that William wouldn't go off unless he saw his father.
Gary then devised an unconventional strategy to test Paul Savage. He put a child's Spider-Man suit where Paul couldn't miss it, near the bush track he frequently walked. It was similar to the suit worn by William, but a distinguishing feature was hidden from view. Savage's sighting of the suit was captured by surveillance cameras, and his description of what he saw put Gary on high alert.
The suit that William disappeared in had a white spider on the back of the suit. That information had never been released to the public. The suit that we placed on the track didn't have the white spider exposed. He has described a white spider on the back of the suit in the number of conversations that he's had. At its highest, he's describing the suit that William was wearing, not the suit we placed on the track.
And I thought I seen a white bit of cloth there.
The thing that I just need to clarify is that the Spider-Man suit that William disappeared in, it had white on the top.
Oh, I wouldn't know.
To Gary, the Spider-Man suit seemed like a lucky break in the case, which gave him hope. But with no sign of William and no forensic evidence, many in his team were losing faith.
They felt that their careers were being just stopped.
So really, was there a feeling from some of the officers they wanted to wrap it up?
Yes, most definitely. They were tired of it. There was nothing sexy or exciting about working on this investigation. It was hard grind. The breakthroughs were hard to come by.
By now, Gary's team was deeply divided, and in the end, it would be his officers, not Paul Savage, who would make allegations against him. They were driven by criticism that in pursuing Paul Savage, their boss had tunnel vision.
Was there any sense that you were fixated on Paul Savage? I mean, do you make any concession about that?
I make absolutely no concession whatsoever, and that's a question that has to be asked, because that's the narrative that people put out, that he's just obsessed on Paul Savage. There's a whole range of other people that we heavily targeted, as much as Paul Savage, that no one knows about.
Coming up,
if I was guilty of that, I go to jail.
Why the force wasn't with Gary Jubelin.
He was shaping up, ready to fight me.
And how it failed.
I have not done a handover to any police officer on this matter.
The search for little William.
They're lying.
That's next on 60 Minutes.
Former New South Wales homicide detective Gary Jubelin seeks balance in everything he does. He says he may not always achieve it, but he pursues most things with a passion, along with a healthy dose of perspective.
Your life seems to be about balance.
Yeah.
It's sort of weighing up the contradictions.
Yeah.
You know, you like to fight.
Yes.
You like to do yoga.
Yeah.
You're a hard copper, you don't drink coffee.
Yeah.
You drink tea.
I often think about that and I think it's good. My mum was soft, my dad was hard. Maybe that combination is the yin-yang side of the things, but it works for me, it helps me, and it gets me through the pressure situations.
For the past year, Gary has experienced pressure like never before, accused of losing the very perspective he's so proud of. Those accusations came from within his own team, Strike Force Rosanne, which was investigating the tragic disappearance of toddler William Tyrrell.
We were preparing for the coronial inquest, and we're talking about the brief, and this particular person, I would describe as escalating from 0 to 10 very rapidly, was obviously agitated, cranky at me, and didn't agree with what I was saying.
What happens next is extraordinary, more reminiscent of a TV crime series than a modern workplace, with a verbal disagreement turning physical.
He was walking, shaping up, ready to fight me. I tried to de-escalate it, and he kept coming at me. I stood my ground.
But what does standing your ground mean? I mean, were you shaping up to fight him?
I was standing to defend myself. The police that witnessed that grabbed hold of him, made sure that he didn't have access to his firearm, and escorted him from the building.
That officer would eventually take sick leave, but he also made damning allegations against Gary Jubelin. Most gravely, that Gary falsified affidavits, which ultimately proved to be a false accusation.
Now, Tara, if I was guilty of that, I go to jail. That is a serious allegation.
Next, in January last year, acting on an internal complaint that Gary had illegally recorded conversations with Paul Savage, police seized his phone. But Gary was assured by two of the most senior police in New South Wales that he would not be charged.
I spoke to a deputy commissioner. He said, this is ridiculous. And that same Deputy Commissioner in front of an Assistant Commissioner told me that I wouldn't be charged.
But despite numerous assurances that complaints were trivial, Gary was sidelined.
All of a sudden I'm that bad that I've been taken off all my cases, access to the computer, no firearm, no police car, and allowed to talk to anyone in the homicide office. I wasn't even allowed to phone William's family.
This isn't just the process when you're accused of something like this?
No, and a lot of people just said they couldn't believe the way I was being treated.
I don't recall the state gunning for someone so hard for so little.
Former New South Wales Police Deputy Commissioner Nick Caldos has had his own run-in with New South Wales Police and says they can be short-sighted and vindictive.
One of the saddest parts of this whole saga is that the investigation into the disappearance of William Tyrrell, in my view, will now struggle to get anywhere. And I think that's really, really something that people should hang their head in shame about.
And do you think that is a direct result of taking Gary Jubelin off the case?
Yes.
So many times I just said, look, just let me do a handover to the police working on it. I've spoken to William's foster family, and they were told by senior police that there was a formal handover. I have not done a handover to any police officer on this matter, and if anyone suggests I do, they are lying. And that's a pretty strong word, but that's what I'm saying. They're lying. I have done no handover of this investigation.
Yet anything you say or do will be recorded and may be used in evidence. Do you understand that?
Yes, I understand.
Benched but not charged, Gary was so disillusioned with how he was being treated, he resigned last year. His cherished 34-year career was over, but it would get worse. Just 2 months later, in July, he learned from his lawyer he would now be criminally charged.
I'm on the system now as wanted, and if any police officer pulled me over, they could arrest me on the spot. Now, it's bad, but it wasn't a wanted post to keep a lookout for Gary Jubelin. He's on the run.
Sounds like it.
Well, yeah, it was an unusual position to be in. I thought it wasn't that hard to find. I did what everyone does on the run that day. I went to the pub and I phoned Professional Standards and said, look, how about you come and get me at my home and let's get this done.
With his conviction this week, there haven't been many highs for Gary or his family. He's had time to get used to no longer being a detective, but now he has to deal with the loss of his reputation. To his sister Michelle and daughter Gemma, though, Gary is and will always be a good man.
I don't know what it would take to break him, but it's not this.
We're just devastated about, the verdict. But at the same time, I couldn't be prouder. He doesn't take the easy road. He stands for what he believes in, and you can't fault someone who does that.
Were you close to breaking?
Tough question. I'm not going to show you that I broke. Probably the most difficult part was seeing my children. That hurt. So, yeah.
Why is that?
Because they're so proud of me. Yeah. So it's not good. I felt like I've let them down.
I mean, to have a conviction recorded against your name, that's there forever.
I know, and it's like a scar. It's horrible. I'm mortified that if someone looks up my name, that I've got a criminal history beside it. It hurts.
We've just lodged an appeal. This is the appeal. We've lodged the appeal and I'll see how that plays out.
Gary is now in a fight to clear his name, appealing his conviction and penalty of $10,000, a move welcomed by his supporters.
I don't accept that he broke the law. I mean, we all have to abide by the umpire's decision, but if he didn't do it to defend his interests, what other motive could he have? I think this has been a dreadful miscarriage of justice.
Regrets, yeah. I wanted to finish my career catching killers. That's what I did, and that's what I had a passion for.
His passion now is writing about those killers as a newspaper journalist.
You don't forget a homicide, and you shouldn't forget a homicide.
He's also working on an autobiography detailing the life and many deaths of a homicide detective. And clearly, in his heart, that's who he'll always be.
Time of reflection. I look back at my career and I walk out with my head held high. The cops have disowned me, but I know what I did and I'm proud of what I did. And would I do it all again? Yep. And I'd probably do it exactly the same way.
Hello, I'm Tara Brown. Thanks for watching. To keep up with the latest from 60 Minutes Australia, make sure you subscribe to our channel. You can also download the 9Now app for full episodes and other exclusive 60 Minutes content.